Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Open Mic here on the John Campea YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege to have you guys joining me here today, as it is every day. And for those of you who are new here, Open Mic is simply just a much more informal, more relaxed version of the John Campea Show. We don't have any agenda here today. It's just taking the live topics that you guys send in to me. You guys program this show. We talk about what you want to talk about. So that's what we're going to do now. Some of you may have remembered that on yesterday's Open Mic and earlier today on the John Campea Show, there were a few questions that we didn't get around to. I actually put together an entirely separate video for that that's up on my YouTube channel right now. So if you had a question sent in earlier, it's up on the channel right now. You can go check that out. And if there we got a lot of time here today, so I don't think we'll have any leftover questions. But if there are any questions we don't get around to today that you send in today, don't worry, it'll be either answered in its own standalone video or first thing on tomorrow's Open Mic show. So, with all that out of the way, let's jump into the first question today that you guys are sending in live. And the first one comes to us from Chris Bradford, who sends in, thanks for the advice on public speaking. Oh, that was you who sent in that question. For those of you who weren't there earlier today, on the John Campea Show during the live chat segment, Chris sent in a question asking for some advice on public speaking. So Chris writes, thanks for the advice on public speaking. I think I did pretty good, but I was still pretty nervous. You are the best. Well, of course you're nervous. Look, there's this old Seinfeld joke, but it's true. They say the number one fear amongst most people is speaking in public. The number two fear is death, which means at a funeral, people would rather be the one in the coffin than the one giving the eulogy. It's an old Seinfeld joke, but it's completely true. So don't feel bad about feeling nervous. Totally natural to feel nervous, but the more you do it, the more you'll find those nerves will settle and probably go away. All right, the next one comes to us from Jim Copland, who writes, how excited are you for Damien Chazelle and Ryan Gosling's First Man? Looks like Chazelle is bringing back a lot of the same crew from La La Land. And yeah, First Man is a film I've actually been talking about for a while that I'm very excited about this year. It's got Oscar contention written all over it. Not only do you have Damien Chazelle doing it, and you got Ryan Gosling in it, but Claire Foy is also one of the leads. And of course, the last two seasons, she's been playing Queen Elizabeth in The Queen. She's great. You got John Bernthal, who's going to be in this as well. You got Kyle Chandler is going to be in it as well. You've got Jason Clarke, Pablo Schreiber, he was just recently in that Gerard Butler cop film with O'Shea Jackson as well. I'm trying to remember the name of that. But anyway, it's a dynamic looking movie. I cannot wait to see it. I think it's going to be awesome. And so to answer your question, Jim, how excited am I for that movie? Pretty damn excited. Put it on your radar. If First Man it's about, the first man going and walking on the moon. That's what it's about. So it's a bit of a period piece as well. So if you have not put First Man on your radar for this year, put it on your radar. It's going to be, I have high hopes for it. High hopes for it. Okay, the next question comes to us from Chris Bradford, again, who writes, also, since they're calling Spider-Man, which I don't like, Iron Spider, do you think there's a chance that will be the title of Homecoming 2? Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen it, this, I gotta tell you, this bothers me. There have been released a whole bunch of individual character posters for the upcoming Avengers Infinity War, which is great. I mean, I love seeing the posters. I think, was 18 posters that got released. Missing among them were Black Panther, Ant-Man, and Hawkeye. None of those three had individual posters, but whatever. We know they're going to be in the film. But Spider-Man's poster, whereas Falcon said Falcon, Iron Man said Iron Man, Captain America said Captain America, Spider-Man's said Iron Spider. And this bothers me. Now, you all know how much I love Spider-Man Homecoming. I love that film. I think it was either my number 2 or number 3 favorite comic book movie of the year. I thought it was great. I had such a good time with it. But the one thing that has always bothered me about Spider-Man Homecoming was that Marvel felt the need that, you know what? We don't think Spider-Man is cool enough. We don't think Spider-Man, one of the all-time most popular comic book characters, We don't think he's cool enough the way he is. I know. Let's make him Iron Man Jr. And let's give him this high-tech Iron Man suit that looks like a Spider-Man suit, but really it's an Iron Man suit. And it's got his own little version of Jarvis built into it. Oh, and it'll be great. Then Spider-Man will be cool because he can't be cool otherwise. That always bothered me. And I love the movie. Don't get me wrong. That didn't ruin the movie for me whatsoever. I still loved it. But I remember thinking, really? This is our first standalone Spider-Man film of the new incarnation of Spider-Man. And in this first one, we had to go and make him Iron Man Jr. already? Anyway, it just makes me even more concerned. Especially when you got an actor like Tom Holland, who's doing such a great job playing the character, that they didn't even call his poster Spider-Man. Nope, Spider-Man's not cool enough. Spider-Man's not cool. Nope, you gotta make him more like Iron Man. That's the only way Spider-Man can be cool. And they're even calling the poster Iron Spider. Which I before those of you were screaming at your computers, but John, in the comics, I get it, I know. But we had decades of Spider-Man before they had to make him more cool to be like Iron Man. Before there was ever the Iron Spider suit, we had decades and decades and decades and decades of Spider-Man comics where Spider-Man was just cool because he was Spider-Man. So anyway, I know I'm going off on a bit of a rant, but that's the one thing I don't like that they're doing. As excited as I am for Avengers Infinity War, as hyped as I am about Homecoming 2, as much as I love the original Homecoming, that's the one thing that bothers me. And the fact that they went so out of their way to even call the poster Iron Spider just makes me, So basically, in Infinity War, we can expect Spider-Man just to be more and more Tony Jr., That's what we can expect at this point. But anyway, whatever. It'll be the one small little thing that bugs me, hopefully in an ocean of awesomeness that will be the movie. All right, let's move on. Next question comes to us from Ben Rayner. And Ben Rayner writes, do you agree with people who are saying mistake to announce Star Wars director on International Women's Day? No, that's stupid. That's somebody looking for something to complain about. Personally, I haven't read anybody complaining that, how dare you make an announcement about a man on International Women's Day? Well, it's still a day. It's still a work day. Last I checked, today is still a work day. And people are still doing their jobs. And business is happening. It doesn't mean you shut down anything that has to do with men. That's not what National Women's Day is about. So that to me is fucking ridiculous. Criticizing a company for making an announcement about something they're doing with their business that happens to involve a man on International Women's Day. So wait a second, International Women's Day is not a moratorium on anything male ever being allowed to be discussed in public. That's ridiculous. That is nonsense. And I think most women who celebrate, because me and my wife, we had a morning this morning celebrating International Women's Day. And she was, because she's my wife, and I thanked her just for being a woman and for being awesome and being who she is and blah, blah, blah. Yay! That doesn't mean Disney can't make an announcement about a movie they have coming out. That's a ridiculous notion. Like on Christmas, we don't tell anything that has to do with, and okay, don't put anybody Jewish in the news. Anybody who's Jewish, no mention of Jewish people in the news today because it's Christmas. That's equally as ridiculous. So the notion of criticizing a company for putting out a press release about something that they are doing just because it involves a man is ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. And we should be celebrating International Women's Day. Absolutely we should. It's great that we have a day to recognize that. But that doesn't mean the rest of the world shuts down. That's all I'm saying. The Impossible Something writes, Tom Hardy and Amy Adams, best actors without Oscars. Amy Adams, there's a legit argument to be made there. I'm not ready to put Tom Hardy in that. Tom Hardy's a great actor. I love Tom Hardy. He's been in a couple of really good things, but he doesn't have the resume. To me, I mean, to you, that's great. I'm not trying to undermine your opinion at all. I'm just giving you my point of view. To me, he just doesn't have the resume yet to boast that. To me, and I struggled with this, and then somebody brought this name up to me, and I was shocked because I thought he did have an Oscar, but he doesn't. And that's Ralph Fiennes. Ralph Fiennes, to me, he's no longer being put in any movies as a leading man, which is whatever. He's like one of the most gifted actors. I put him top six or seven best actors on the planet. is Ralph Fiennes, maybe top 5. And I thought he had an Academy Award for The English Patient, because somebody brought that name up to me on the show, Ralph Fiennes. For those of you who are, 18 years old or younger, he's Voldemort, okay, in Harry Potter. But when somebody brought that name up to me, I said, well, no, not Ralph Fiennes, English Patient. Then I was like, didn't he win an Academy Award for English Patient? Because I remember English Patient won Best Picture that year, and I remember he was nominated, but he didn't win. Ralph Fiennes is the greatest actor in the world who does not have an Oscar on his mantle. I put him above Jake Gyllenhaal. I put him above Tom Hardy. I'll even put him above Ian McKellen. I'll put him above Patrick Stewart. Ralph Fiennes is just purely an actor's actor. And when he plays a role, forget about it. Just forget about it when he plays a role. So for me, my money is definitely on Ralph Fiennes. I wouldn't even put Tom Hardy next. I think ahead of Tom Hardy would be a Patrick Stewart, would be an Ian McKellen, probably would be a Jake Gyllenhaal. And there's probably a few other names there as well. Chiwetel Ejiofor. I keep thinking he won an Oscar, but he didn't. Matthew McConaughey won the Oscar that year. So Chiwetel Ejiofor, I would probably put ahead of Tom Hardy as well. Tom Hardy's great. And I have no doubt that at some point in his career, Tom Hardy's going to have one of those statues on his mantle too. But right now, I don't have him in the top 4 or 5. Personally, Amy Adams, though, you and I can be more on the same page with Amy Adams. I haven't been able to think of many others that don't have an Academy Award that I would put above her. So I think you and I might be on the same page as far as that goes. All right, let's go on to the next one. And this one comes to us from Dakota Barber, who writes, showed my family Thor Ragnarok, and they loved it. Awesome. Isn't that a great film? Forgot how fun it is. Also, did you see the Entertainment Weekly covers for Infinity War and some of the new images from them? No, as a matter of fact, somebody else wrote to me and said something along the lines of, what do you think of Teenage Groot or something like that? And I haven't had a chance to go and look. I did 3 videos this morning. I did the John Campea show, then I did the companion video, and then I did that one video on Avengers Infinity War being the longest in the MCU. Then I ran and did a doctor's appointment, came home, had lunch, started doing this show. So I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I will definitely check that out, Dakota, and probably talk about it a little bit on tomorrow's episode of the John Campea show. By the way, let you guys know in advance, appearing on the John Campea show tomorrow, you know how we've had Migdalena? I keep saying Migdalena. I keep saying, because I know somebody else named Migdalena. Anyway, Migdalia has been on the show lately. Jason Immon's been on the show lately. Tomorrow, Olympic gold medalist and undefeated movie trivia guy, Cody Miller, is going to be on the show, joining me for a few minutes tomorrow on the show. So keep your eyes open for that. Olympic gold medalist Cody Miller. Anyway, but I'm sure this will be one of the topics that I cover tomorrow. The Impossible Something writes, Paul Thomas Anderson versus Tarantino. I'll go for Paul Thomas Anderson. Here's the really interesting thing about that comparison with Paul Thomas Anderson and Quentin Tarantino is that they both have very, very unique styles. Very unique styles. But when I say unique, I mean, if you didn't even know about one of their movies, okay, let's say you had no concept of Jackie Brown. None. You've never heard of it? Nothing. And then somebody sat you down and put on Jackie Brown, you'd probably go, man, this feels like a Tarantino movie. See, that's what I mean. Same with Paul Thomas Anderson. Let's say you take one of his films and say you never heard of it, and then they set you down and play it, you'd probably go, this feels like a Paul Thomas Anderson. Like, they both have their very own, very distinct thumbprint, of their styles and what they do. Another director who's like that is Tim Burton. And I'm not a big fan of Tim Burton, but he's got a very distinct style. So do these two guys. Myself, look, there's no wrong answer here. Myself, I'd probably lean Tarantino. I love them both, but if I have to pick one, I'm going to lean Tarantino. Micah T writes, who's been more a victim, Bucky or Logan? I'm going to go Logan on that. Look, both of them have been dealt a bad hand. Both of them have gotten the short end of the stick. But when you really look at Logan and everything he's been through, I'm going to go Logan has gotten the rougher end of the stick on that one. That's what I'm going to lean towards right now. All right. DA298 writes, ever been to movie theaters in other continents, excluding premieres? Did you notice any difference in quality theater? No, never. Honestly, I've never been to a movie theater outside of North America. Never been. I've never been outside of North America, let alone let alone in a movie theater outside of North America. I've been to Mexico. I've been to the United States. I've been to Canada. I've never traveled to Europe. I'm Italian, and I've never been to Italy. My wife is really desperately trying to get me to take a trip this this summer, and we'll see if I can figure that out. One second here. But no, I've never been to a movie theater in a different continent, so I can't really comment on that. It's an interesting question, though. I would like to hear from somebody else who has been in a movie theaters in North America, in Europe, in Asia, in South America, and I'd love to hear what some of the differences are. Adam Griffin writes, do you see any parallels in the careers of M. Night Shyamalan and Ava DuVernay? Both touted as the next coming. Is she in danger of believing the hype as well? Well, no. See, the difference between M. Night and Ava DuVernay is M. Night, first of all, had a string of hits, had a couple of hits back to back, right? But the difference is, I've never gotten the sense from Ava DuVernay that she's buying the hype, that she believes Ava DuVernay, like Ava DuVernay thinks Ava DuVernay is the greatest thing in the world. I've never gotten that impression from her whatsoever. M. Night is a totally different story. There's this infamous story, a true story, and it's in a couple of books, but there's this infamous story where he was making Lady in the Water, one of the most truly atrocious, awful films in cinematic history. Anyway, he was doing the film with Disney. And one night, one of the presidents of Disney had dinner with him. And this is an infamous thing. You can look up the stories of this online. It's a true story. And they had some concerns about the script. They're like, well, are you really writing yourself in, M. Night, as the world's greatest writer who is destined to save the world with his writing, and you're putting yourself in that role? Is that really a good idea? And M. Night, is a really good idea? I think it makes you and the film feel shallow if you put in a film critic as one of the characters who's this vile, nasty person, and he meets this untimely death that's supposed to be a great thing in the movie, and this and this and this, and they just have this long laundry list of things, like a big concerns. And basically, M. Night went, screw you, I'm M. Night Shyamalan. What I touch turns to gold. And he said, screw you to Disney, took the project elsewhere, took Lady in the Water elsewhere, and thus one of the worst films in cinematic history was born. That is never a impression that I've gotten from either seeing Ava DuVernay or seeing her interviewed or anything. I've never gotten that impression from her. And everybody I've spoken to, like said, the studio's never getting that. Remember, she was in talks to do Black Panther. They had different visions, no problem. But clearly Disney still loved her because they kept her around and got her to do Wrinkle in Time instead of Black Panther. Fortunately, Wrinkle in Time is practically an unfilmable story, and it showed in the movie. It didn't turn out very well. I think Ava probably did about as well as anyone could, but it just didn't turn out well. That's just it. But again, you're talking about Shyamalan, who had a couple of big hits and then a string of flops, whereas Ava DuVernay has had one critically lauded, Oscar-nominated film, then one not-so-good film, and never shown any kind of public thing about believing her own hype. So I think those are two very, very different scenarios. That's just my interpretation of it. Ben Rayner writes, I meant John Favreau writing and producing Star Wars TV show. Oh, I have to go back now, Ben. I have no idea what the question was. Oh, yeah, directing. No, I understood that you meant John Favreau. Yeah. So don't worry about it. Totally understood what you meant, Ben. Totally understood what you meant. Chris Martin writes, favorite Adam Sandler comedy? Mine is Happy Gilmore. That is a tough question because, first of all, Adam Sandler hasn't put out a funny comedy in, I don't know, when was Ian McKellen born? Adam Sandler has not put out a funny comedy in a long, long time. However, there was a period of time when Adam Sandler was like the guy, like whatever he put out was gold. And, you know, Happy Gilmore is totally a great one. Happy Gilmore is actually really, really great. But my favorite Adam Sandler film would probably have to be Waterboy. The Waterboy is probably my favorite one. There's just something about it that captured, It captured some of the stereotypes of Adam Sandler, but it was the stereotypes to perfection that we have about Adam Sandler now. And he was just on his game. He still does the same ridiculous stuff, except when he did it back then, he did it really funny. Today, he's just lost his niche. And I think he should just go straight into dramatic acting because Adam Sandler has shown again and again, he has a gift for dramatic acting. But, comedy's his bread and butter. I get that. It's just his comedy hasn't worked for me in a long time. And I keep waiting for him to recapture that magic that he had for so long. But anyway, yeah. So my favorite is going to end up being Waterboy. All right. We move on now to Chris Martin. And Chris Martin writes, thoughts on the 1996 101 Dalmatians with Glenn Close. I thought she was perfect in the Cruella. I think she was a perfect Cruella de Vil. She was a great Cruella de Vil. I'll be honest with you. I didn't love it. Even back then, I thought it was okay, but there was something about it to me. And even though Glenn Close was just a fantastic Cruella de Vil, they weren't able to capture the magic to me. They weren't able to capture that magic of the original animation that we all know and remember and love so much. And they just weren't able to bring that around and get it. So I remember liking the film. I probably haven't seen it in a good 10 years. I've only probably seen it 2 or 3 times at most, but I didn't love it. I didn't think it was all that special, but I know a couple people who just live and breathe by that movie, just think it's spectacular. And that's cool. For me, it was okay. I don't think it was a bad film. It just didn't quite work for me on that level. Let's see. Oops, lost it. Backing up. Oops, still backing up. Give me a second. I'll find it. Here we go. Okay. Back to the right place. Okay. John Eaton writes, want movie about the first Jedi. Rian Johnson trilogy, maybe. It's possible. I mean, I'm more of a fan of the Jedi Order. I would rather see, if you offered me the option, and I can see why you would ask for that. I totally can. But if you were to offer me the option, I can either have one movie that's about the very first Jedi, or another movie set a few hundred years, maybe 1,000 years later, when you have a firm established Jedi Order in the Old Republic. I would probably take the firm established Jedi Order in the Old Republic. I would probably go for that one. But I could see the upside about things about the first Jedi, because maybe, as there is balance in the Force, as the first Jedi was coming about, the first Sith was coming about, and the conflict that they had and all that kind of stuff. That could be a cool story. That could be really good. But again, for me, I probably lean more towards, the Old Republic, established Jedi Order, that kind of stuff. I'd rather see a band of 20 Jedis fighting 20 Sith, that kind of thing. But hey, I could do both. I could totally be talked into both. All right. Chris Martin writes, I know you're not the biggest fan of the DC animated films, but I thought The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Under the Red Hood were very well done. Well, to be specific, I'm neither a big fan of either the DC animated films or the Marvel animated films, to be honest with you. A lot of their direct-to-home video stuff, I do not find all that good. I know there's people that rave about it. I just don't find them good. But I've always said the exceptions for me there are a couple of exceptions. On the Marvel side, for example, the Doctor Strange animated movie. I thought that was well done. I like that one. On the DC side, I have always mentioned The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Under the Red Hood. Now, some people might want to say, well, what about Mask of the Phantasm? Well, now you're going back to a completely different era. So I'm not really counting that. But yeah, definitely two of the exceptions for this, either Marvel or DC animated films, I just generally don't like. The two of the exceptions would definitely be The Dark Knight Returns, which is a very faithful adaptation of the graphic novel, and of course, Under the Red Hood. I thought Under the Red Hood, and one of my favorite Joker incarnations. The Joker in Under the Red Hood was prime, just really, really just fearsome and terrifying and everything that you want the Joker to be. I really dug that incarnation. Let's see. I Am the Liquor writes, have you ever seen the Trailer Park Boys? R.I.P. JD. Yeah, I did. I mean, look, living in Canada, everybody saw at least a little. And don't get me wrong, if you're not Canadian, It's not like the Trailer Park Boys were the biggest thing in Canada. They weren't, but they were pretty popular. So yes, I did, and absolutely, R.I.P. JD. There was something about the Trailer Park Boys that just resonated with a lot of people on different levels. And it was one of those things where it's like nobody really expected it to be. They never expected it to be big. And I don't think they ever expected it to last more than a season. And it kind of became this little cult phenomenon that just caught on and kept going, and good on them. Good on them. Chris Martin writes, thoughts on the Roseanne reboot? You know what's funny? First of all, I never watched Roseanne. It's just never a show that really appealed to me. And I didn't think I knew anybody else that did either. But it is crazy in my circle of friends talking to people how many of them are absolutely like completely excited about this Roseanne relaunch. It's not really a reboot. It's more of a relaunch or a revisiting or something like that. I can't believe how many people I know are actually really excited about, which has completely caught me off guard. Because I was never into it. Maybe if I had watched it when I was younger, I would get it, but it's just not one of the sitcoms that I watched back then. So, hey, let's put it this way. I'm happy people are excited about it. That's great. I'm happy people are excited about it. KW Garrett writes, you often say that no one sets out to make a bad movie. Did producers watch Transformers last night before release and say, yep, this makes perfect sense? But see, KW, that's the problem. The movie's made. There's nothing you can do at that point. There's nothing you can do at that point. Because at that point, you have spent so much money in making it, you got to release it. You have to. See, here's the thing. Everybody thinks they've got something that could be a good movie when they're setting out to make it. Nobody sets out to make a bad movie. But here's the thing. I have read scripts that I thought looked really good. Like I read the script and it played a certain way in my head. And then I saw the movie and was like, oh my God, that did not work at all. It's still pretty close to the script, but it didn't work. And that's the thing. You can imagine how it's going to work the best that you can. And there are some people who are very good at kind of envisioning how it will translate from the page to the screen. That's great. But as any director will tell you, it's not even when you're shooting the movie. It's not until you get into the editing bay, either with dailies or at, once production is done. It's not until you're in that edit and you're starting to putting these, dailies together or even putting these rough cuts together. And you start seeing it actually play out in front of your eyes that you really get a sense of whether it worked or not. Now, we've heard stories about people shooting a movie and they're going, we knew from first day that we were shooting something special. Or we've heard stories about, yeah, we were shooting, we felt we were in trouble. But those are the rare exception. For the most part, it's not until you start putting it together. I have no doubt. When they started, throwing around the ideas for Transformers last night, that it probably sounded like a good idea. I would bet if you were in the room, I would bet that if I was in the room and somebody verbally laid out this movie, Transformers, last night, we probably would have gone, that sounds great. But it's not until you take that step of faith, start shooting it, and then start putting it together in the edit that you really get a sense. And at that point, it's too late. At that point, it's just you make the best of a bad situation. Obviously, the producers knew when the producers saw this movie for the first time, they realized, yep, this didn't work. This is crap. I'm absolutely sure they knew it was crap once they watched it. But what are you supposed to do at that point? Just flush the hundreds of millions of dollars you put into it? Or do you release it in theater and make as much money as you can at that point? Understanding that if you made it good, you would have made even more money, but oh well, it's too late. So, yes, nobody sets out to make a bad movie. Nobody tries to make a bad movie. John Eaton writes, you're not a fan of casting questions, or I know you're not a fan of casting questions, but I would love to see Tim Allen as an older Hal Johnson. Something tells me he would crush it as a space cop. Well, I mean, if you're trying to, get him to re-embody a live action Buzz Lightyear, maybe, if that's what you're going for. And hey, man, it's all subjective. Like, if you're just joking around about the space cop thing, good. If you're being serious that you would love to see Tim Allen as an older Hal Jordan, hey man, there's no accounting for taste. You like the idea? That's great. It makes no sense to me, but hey, why not? We've seen crazier things. Benny95 writes, new Infinity War images released. Trailer tomorrow? Quite possible. Actually, a lot of people thought with the posters coming out yesterday, with all those posters coming out yesterday, a lot of people thought there might have been a chance that they would have released a new trailer today. Because quite often that's the pattern. You release a big image, or in many cases, a poster, and then about 24 hours later, you release a trailer. We didn't get a trailer today, but they're putting out new images today. Look, it's got to be soon. The movie comes out in a little over 7 weeks. We've only had one trailer so far. A new one is coming soon. Whether it's tomorrow, whether it's next week, I'm not sure, but it's got to be coming, and it's got to be coming soon. And I'm sure it'll be coming soon, and we'll get our hands on it pretty quick. Let's see. Next one comes us from Sujith, who writes, rewatched the 1968 Planet of the Apes movie. Such a great sci-fi classic with subtle social commentary. The science still holds up. Okay, first of all, it is a magnificent film. It is an absolutely magnificent film. If it wasn't for Ben-Hur, I would call it my favorite Charlton Heston movie. But Ben-Hur is my favorite Charlton Heston movie. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. It's not so subtle. The social commentary, I find anyway, in Apes is not so subtle. But I'm thrilled you had a chance to watch it again. And, you know, you'd be surprised how many people have not watched the original Planet of the Apes. There's a whole bunch of people that have not watched the original Planet of the Apes, and you totally should. You absolutely should be watching Planet of the Apes. Hey guys, listen, before we go on with the rest of the questions here, I want to let you guys know about something. I announced it this morning on the John Campea Show, but I'm really thrilled to announce this, that we have a new sponsor of the John Campea Show for at least a little while. And you guys know I reject a lot of sponsorships because they're just not things I believe in. They're not things I use. I can't be authentic about it. But a lot of you guys have been telling me about this app called Stardust. And you guys have been talking to me about it for a while. Well, the other day, Stardust reached out to me and they proposed this partnership, and it works beautifully for me. First of all, if you don't know what Stardust is, it's a really great little app. So you take this app, here's the idea. You take the app and you record a 3 to 30 second reaction, or like a mini review, if you will, of a TV show you've just watched, a trailer you just watched, or a movie you just watched, or, as you guys like to do in my shows, a recommendation you would make for people, like maybe an older movie. Maybe Sujith wants to get on there and say, hey guys, I just rewatched Rise of the Planet of the Apes. If you have guys not seen this, it's brilliant. It's got the subtle social commentary. It's got this, it's got that, it's got the other thing. And it's just wonderful for building film fan community. Now, where it works really well with the John Campea Show is, you guys know, I've been trying to figure out a really good, effective, efficient way for you guys to send in video content. Because, you know, on Open Mic, I was taking video questions for a while, but it was a really arduous process. First of all, for you guys to figure out how to record it, save it a certain way, figure out how to get it to me, then I had to edit it in. But with this, all you have to do now, if you want to get on, this is great. If you want to get on Stardust, record an idea, you just record it. Then once you're done recording, hit next or edit, and then just tap on the screen and tag me at John Campea. That's all you got to do, is just tag me on the screen at John Campea. Then what I'm going to do is, a couple of times a week, I'm going to have a segment on the John Campea Show called What We're Watching. And I'm going to feature, it's going to be like a 5-minute segment. I'm going to feature you guys giving recommendations and giving your reactions to TV shows, trailers, or movies, and then I'll respond to them as well. It's going to be a great system. I cannot wait to get rolling with this. I'm very excited about it. So listen, if you don't have the Stardust app yet, look in the description of this video. Right near the top of the description is a link to go and get the Stardust app. Go get it, download it. It's free. It's easy to use. It's a great social community, great way to share your reactions and little mini reviews of things as well. And I am thrilled to be working with Stardust on this, and I think it's going to be an awful lot of fun. Okay, with that out of the way, let's now get back into the live questions that you guys have been sending in. And we go back over here to Matt Thornton, who writes, I know you're not a fan of Ashoka Tano, that's true, but how often does a character go from being mostly disliked to the Star Wars community to one that most beloved. Well, not often. And look, hey, more power to people who like Ahsoka Tano. That's great. I'm never going to ever try to talk anybody out of liking Ahsoka Tano. For me, it was a character that just dug far too deep of a hole for me right off the bat that it couldn't recover. And even in the later years of Clone Wars, I never got on board with the character. Now, I will admit, I started liking her a lot more in Rebels, and the way they were using her character in Rebels, that I was warming up a little bit. But here's the thing. How many characters have been so disliked off the bat? The only one I can really think of is Jar Jar Binks. So, and I don't see Jar Jar Binks becoming a beloved character anytime soon. But that's the only other one I can think of that just everybody hated right off the bat. So, hey, people warmed up to Ahsoka Tano. And a lot of people celebrate that. They made a novel about her, all that kind of stuff. And that's great. That is awesome. I'm thrilled that people in the fan community can enjoy it. It's just, the character's just not for me. That's all. All right. Luis Francisco writes, do you think they will examine where Cap or explain where Cap was in Black Panther? No, they don't have to explain it. Just because he could have been at the 7-Eleven picking up a Slurpee. They don't have to explain it. See, that's one of the drawbacks, Luis, of the shared cinematic universe. Whenever something happens anywhere, everybody wants to ask, well, where was Iron Man? Where was Captain America? But Captain America was in Wakanda at the end of Civil War. Yes, he was in the country, but he may not have been there 5 minutes later. He might have been doing something else. So I don't think they need to explain where he was. And I'm personally not looking for an explanation. He went to New York. He went to break out the other Avengers who were in the fish tank. He could be anywhere. And I don't really think it needs an explanation. That's just my point of view anyway. Bobby Graham writes, I know you won't break the DC news you found out, but can you give... Nope, not even going to discuss it. Not even going to discuss it. I've mentioned that before. Sujith writes, things we agree on. Paddington 2 was awesome. The creators and the big name stars involved were all happy and proud with what they put out, and they should be. Yeah, Paddington 2. Somebody asked me on my show the other day, what's your favorite film of 2018 so far? And I think everybody, understandably so, was expecting me to say Black Panther. But Black Panther is actually my second favorite film of the year so far. My favorite film of the year so far is Paddington 2. Sue me. Sue me. It is a beautifully constructed movie with characters you get attached to and love. It's charming. It's endearing. It's got great balance of humor and emotion. It's just a beautiful film. If they do a Paddington 3, and I'm not sure they will, but if they do a Paddington 3 and it ends up being on par with the first Paddington, which I loved, and the second Paddington, it becomes a top 5 greatest trilogy of all time. I know it feels weird to say that about more of a children's slanting kind of movie, but it's a beautifully constructed movie. So yes, Paddington for me is my favorite film of the year so far. So far. Luis Francisco writes, I wanted Ahsoka and everyone with the Force to die. Well, so did I, because that's where Yoda kind of suggested the whole Star Wars thing was left. It would have made much more sense for them to do that, but they decided canon, schmanon, whatever. We're in charge now. We can just say canon. Whatever we say is canon, so we're just going to change it as we go. So yeah, it kind of bothered me too. And you know what? Here's the funny thing. Since I started to get on board with Ahsoka Tano, I wanted her to have the big heroic death. And I thought she should have just died and be done with it with her fight with Vader, fighting to hold him off so her friends could get away, giving her life so that the other people could live, much like Kanan did. I thought she earned it with her run on Rebels. And they had to cheap out on that too, which I felt bad about. Edmund Zippo writes, you keep recasting Felipe and the show still works. Go tell that to DC. I love your show. They bring me a lot of joy. Thanks for all that you do. Well, thank you so much, Edmund. I really appreciate that. The fact that you would just, take a moment and just say that. I appreciate that. That makes me feel good. Thank you so much, man. Chris Martin writes in, hey, John, I deal with anxiety and depression. Your show really helps me cope and deal with that along with friends and family. I always look forward to watching your shows every day. Please never quit doing what you do. Keep bringing the filthy. Well, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for sending that in. Thank you for being a supporter of the show. But, it's the best thing is me doing my show would not be good at all if everybody, all of you guys, the community here, were just a bunch of toxic little, cretins, like they are in a lot of other YouTube spaces, right? I mean, it's just the YouTube comment sections around YouTube can be just a cesspool. But for you guys, make being a part of the film fan community fun. And you guys, specifically who watch this show, you make it enjoyable to do the show. There have been times, even at previous jobs of mine, that sometimes the chat boards and the forums make it hard to do my job. But you guys, since I've started doing my own thing, you guys make it elevates everything. And I think because of how great most of you guys are in the live chats, in the comment sections afterwards, in your exchanges with each other, because of how great you guys are, it makes being here fun. And it makes being here kind of an oasis from the digital storm that's out there sometimes. And I think, Chris, while I am certainly happy to take credit. Thank you so much for giving me the credit. But I think it's probably even more so, not just me. I think it's everybody else who's in our community, who's in our chat boards, who it's ever. It's 99% of it is such positive, great stuff, good debate, good discussion. Every once in a while you get some nasty stuff in there, but that's to be expected. But for the most part, I think it's everybody here who does such a good job of being positive, fun film fans, even when talking about things they don't like. And that's why, Chris, I keep telling people that, you as a viewer, you as a chat board member, you as a forum commenter, you have power to make somebody's day. You really do. Just by being an engaged film fan. And I think that's one of the greatest things in the world about this thing that we all belong to, the film fan community. I think it's one of the best things that we're a part of. I love it. Clearly you are getting a lot of it, and that's great. And you know what, man, when you come out on the other side of your anxiety and your depression, make sure you're that positive influence for other people as well. That's the best thanks you can give to everybody here. So thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. That takes a lot of guts. Sujith writes, very few filmmakers can marry autistic and ambitious storytelling with blockbuster spectacles like Nolan can. Warner Brothers trusts him for that. Thoughts? Yeah. There are several directors who can, but definitely Christopher Nolan is one of them. And they do completely trust him. They actually traded away several movie rights to keep working with Christopher Nolan on a couple of projects, particularly with Interstellar. So yeah, absolutely. He's one of the best in the business right now, no doubt. Ziaxi Lee Z writes, hello, John. You know what? I've read questions from you a number of times. I think every single time I have never failed to pronounce your name differently every single time. And it's never been on purpose. I'm just that bad at name pronunciations. Anyway, hello, John. Do you think Benedict Cumberbatch or Andrew Garfield can be included in the conversation of Best Actor without Oscars yet? Nope. They're both tremendous. They're both tremendous actors. They're both great actors. They do not. And you know how big of a fan I am of Andrew Garfield. And I may not talk about it much, but I'm also a big fan of Benedict. But from my personal point of view, I don't think they belong in the conversation yet. With Best Actor not to have an Academy Award yet. I don't think they belong in that conversation just yet. Let's see. Anthony Cullen writes, first premiere you've been to. For me, I don't know what TWD at MSGNY is. Madison Square Garden, I don't know what The Walking Dead? Is that? Did they do a premiere there? The first premiere I ever went to, I remember it was a Warner Brothers film. It was a Warner Brothers film. I'm trying to remember which one it was. And it was here in Los Angeles. I'd only been here for a while. Oh, actually, that's not true. My first premiere ever was the premiere that David Arquette did of his little April 20th movie. I think it's called The Ripper or something like that. It was about a bunch of kids who just smoke a lot of pot and there's a killer going around, or The Tripper. The Tripper is what it's called. There's a killer going around in a Ronald Reagan mask, killing people. And he did the premiere, and it was the morning of. He got his publicist to reach out to me to invite me to come to it, because I guess he was reading my website at the time called The Movie Blog. And he saw that I was in LA, invited me down. I went down and got to meet him, got to meet his wife, Courtney Cox, who was my celebrity crush at the time. Got to meet The Punisher. I got to meet a lot of really cool people. And the premiere was held at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. That sounds weird, but if you lived in Hollywood, they do a lot of movie screenings at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and people really get a big kick out of it. Sorry, guys. People get a big, massive kick out of it. And that was the first premiere I was ever to, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Let's see. Cecil1304 writes, "Hi again, John. Shut up and take my money. Thank you so much for your support, Cecil. I appreciate that." Amin writes, "I think maybe Spider-Man issue could be a contractual thing with Sony where Marvel can't use the word Spider-Man in promos and stuff for non-Sony film." No. That's not true at all. That's not true. They wouldn't say you can use Spider-Man, but don't improve our marketability by using the name Spider-Man. No. That I can 100% guarantee you that it's. I like that you're thinking outside the box. I mean, you're trying to think of different, look at this from different angles, and that's good. I appreciate that, but I can 100% guarantee you that had nothing to do with Sony saying you can't use the name Spider-Man in marketing. That I can 100% guarantee you that's not the case. Edmund writes, "Star Wars Rebels spoiler." You read it. I mean, it aired on TV a long time ago. Do you think Ahsoka is the one somehow to tell Obi-Wan that Vader is now more machine than man? No. I think he just heard through the grapevine. I mean, he was the right-hand man to the head of government in the galaxy. People throughout the galaxy heard of and knew of Darth Vader. So, and being who he is, I'm sure he would have kept his ear to the ground about the ongoing. So, no, I don't think Ahsoka Tano's the one who told him about that. Let's see. But what you're saying makes sense. Because, she had that encounter with Vader, realizing it was Anakin. So, I mean, theoretically, I could see why you would follow that narrative idea. I can totally see that. I don't agree with it, but I could totally see why you went that way. Benny writes, "Spiritual realm sequences gave me the feels in Black Panther. Makes me more excited for Lion King movie. What were your favorite scenes in the movie?" In Black Panther? Oh man, I got a couple of scenes that I absolutely frickin' adore. First of all, just that opening scene where King T'Chaka comes to see his brother N'Jabu. Is that his name? N'Jabu? Comes to visit the prince. That's just such a great scene. And when you had, couple of Grace Jones looking chicks are here outside the door. I love that. So yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite scene, but then there's so many scenes throughout it. The whole scene in the Korea nightclub, that's a big one for me. A lot of the stuff that takes place in Wakanda, just seeing the living, breathing country of Wakanda. There's a lot of them, but definitely the spirit realm scenes were all really, really sharp too. Okay, next one comes to us from Chris Martin, who writes, "Do you know if Hugh Jackman or Kella Settle have albums out? If not, they should. Kella's voice in This Is Me is killer." Oh yeah, no kidding. I don't think Hugh Jackman's ever done an album per se, but Kella, I don't know if she does. I would look into it, but just a singing voice, she is a powerhouse. Just a powerhouse of a vocalist. Just amazing. And like I said, a month before The Greatest Showman came out, Anne got me hooked on the soundtrack. And I spent like a month just listening to the soundtrack every single day. I love that soundtrack. And you know what? I think as good as The Greatest Showman is, or as great as The Greatest Show and as great as This Is Me, I still think From Now On, the Hugh Jackman song From Now On, might be my favorite in the movie. I think that one might be my favorite. Silas Pierce writes, "Do you ever think we may not get a second Infinity War trailer?" Oh, no. We're getting a second one, and we'll probably get a third. We are definitely getting more. Trust me, Disney has so much money tied up in this, they're going to market the hell out of it. They're absolutely going to market the hell out of this movie. They're going to do a late push, clearly, but we're getting a push. Absolutely, we are. Carlos writes, where are we here? Carlos writes, "Come to India. They like you there." It's funny. I am always stunned how many people I get writing me from India. It is crazy. And I've never been to India. But it's funny. I actually got an invitation from a university in India not long ago, maybe about a month or two ago. And I always forgot to follow up with them. Now I'm just realizing that now. I got an invitation from a university in India to come to a special conference they were doing to talk about modern pop culture and things like that. And they asked me to come and be a speaker, and I totally forgot to follow up. I'll have to go into my Facebook messages and find it again. But yeah, I'm always kind of shocked how many people I get writing me from India. It's crazy. Sam Fisher writes, just saw In Bruges with Ralph Fiennes. Loved it. Ralph Fiennes, Colin Farrell. That movie, Brendan Gleeson is in it. That movie is so good. There was a lot of arguments going around that movie should have maybe been nominated for Best Picture. It was just so good. And Colin Farrell was so fantastic. And I love In Bruges. It's so good. Thanks for mentioning it, Sam. Maybe you can jump on the Stardust app and do a recommendation video about In Bruges. That would be good. HV39000 writes, besides friends or family or anything to do with your job, what's your favorite thing about living in America? Favorite things. Oh boy, a whole bunch more questions came in. Okay, favorite thing about living in America. Man, I don't know. Most of the things I love about living in America are things that I also had living in Canada, except much better and, free healthcare. So it's, I'm trying to think of something that I really appreciate about living here that is only unique to here and not something that I had in Canada. I'd have to think about that. I would have to think about that. Some people, because I live in Los Angeles, would say the weather, but actually winter is my favorite season of the year. So I really miss winter, especially in Christmas time. I really miss the winter. I'd have to think about it. It's a great question. It's a fair question, but I'd have to think about that. Like I said, many things I like about living in America. Unfortunately, most of those things are also things I have in Canada. So I have to work that out. I have to figure that out. Rajiko writes, I saw The Descent opening day. Oh, I love that movie, man. It's my second all-time favorite horror movie. I saw The Descent opening day with the god-awful happy ending. It kind of ruined the movie for me. Do you see it the first time with the happy ending? I did, and I like the happy ending, to be honest with you. Because the happy ending, I mean, look, the bleak ending is just too predictable. The happy ending made it a story of survival. And I appreciated that in the context of the movie. And it, of course, led into a sequel. The sequel nowhere near as good as the original, granted. But I could totally see, I've got a couple of other friends that didn't like that ending. I got a few friends of mine that agree with me and really like it at the same time. But I can see why you didn't. Nothing wrong with that. For me, it worked, actually. It actually worked for me. And it's one of the reasons that it's my second favorite horror film of all time. Just Plain Steve writes, growing, I was a huge fan of movies like Tales from the Crypt and Creepshow. Do you think those kinds of short story movies could be successful today? Well, I remember they did... The Twilight Zone was one that was also a bunch of short stories. They did one recently called, that John Schnepp was one of the directors. They did one called The ABCs of Death. That was a short form one. But could they do short form one that could be like big? Oh, there was a Movie 27. Is that what it was called? Movie 29, Movie 27, Movie 53, whatever it was called. That comedy with like every comedy star in the world that was out like 3 years ago. That was like a bunch of like short 7-minute things. But it didn't work and it was awful. But I don't know if it can work today, to be honest with you. I think it's not what the audience is going for. They're going for a full-fledged narrative story movie. But I remember Tales from the Crypt and Creepshow and Twilight Zone and all that kind of stuff. I just don't know that those would work today in a theatrical release. And what we do have as far as more modern examples seem to suggest that they don't work as well. So anyway, that's just my thought on that. Sloth Gaming writes, oh, and by the way, guys, I should have said this 15 minutes ago. If you have not sent in a chat question by now, please cut it off. No more chat questions. I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to get through all the ones that we have, but I'm going to try my best. And remember, if I don't get around to your question, I'll answer it tomorrow on tomorrow's open mic. Sloth Gaming, I love that name, man. That's awesome. Hey, John, love your work. Thank you so much, Sloth. I saw a video yesterday talking about how Kathleen Kennedy only focuses on the movies, and you can see it. You think she should interest in the other things from Star Wars, like books, cartoons, etc. I don't know about that. Because, look, when you're the head of a company, even if you're just the head of a division, you can't be directly involved with everything. You can't. That's why you hire other people to do that, and then you trust those people and empower those people and let them do what they do. I always tried to have that mentality when I was doing my stuff. Like even today, like I work with Ray. Ray does the graphics. Ray asked me, what do you want as a sidebar for this topic? I said, dude, you're the graphic guy. I trust you. You do your thing. I could be involved and micromanage it, but then why do I have Ray there? Ray's the one I trust. Ray knows what he's doing. I trust him. When I send off like one of my videos, like today's video about Infinity War being the longest MCU movie ever, you know, he could have got me on the phone and said, okay, John, what graphic do you want me to put in here? And where do you want me to make this edit? And blah, blah, blah. No, Jonathan, you know what you're doing. I trust you. You go, you do your thing. I just believe whatever you decide is going to be what's best. And I'm empowering you to go and make those decisions because you're good at what you do. I believe in you. Go do it. And so I think when you're in a company, especially one the size of like a Lucasfilm, I think, look, if comic books aren't your forte, Kathleen Kennedy is a movie person. She's been a producer in Hollywood for decades. That's her field of expertise. That's the area she should be more hands-on. I'm sure big things that happen, they have to get her okay on in the novels. Like you can't, like say, kill off Poe Dameron in one of the books. Yeah, you'd probably have to run that by Kathleen Kennedy first. But for the most part, I'm sure Kathleen Kennedy, she's got her generals and she lets them do what they do, especially in the areas that's not her area of expertise, which is comic books, maybe the novels, whatever. So no, I think she should be more hands-on with the film stuff and be more hands-off with the other stuff. You cannot have your hands in everything. Bob Iger isn't directly involved in every single thing the Disney Corporation does. He hires people to oversee certain areas. When there's a big issue, then maybe it comes to him. But for the most part, he's got his areas that he's more hands-on in. He's got areas that he's more hands-off in. And I think that's what any head of any company, any team, any whatever has to be able to do. And I think it would just be spreading her too thin. And if she's not a comics expert, you don't want her getting too heavily, directly hands-on involved with the comic book stuff. Let those other guys do that. And when there's big issues, then bring them to her. So I think that's probably the best way to do it. So if it is true that she's more involved in the movies than anything else, and that is 500 times more valuable than the comics or the novel stuff, they make 500 times the money there than they do over there, then I think that's good for her. I think that's probably good time management. Otherwise, it might be bad time management. Great question, Sloth. I appreciate that. Let's see. What do we got next here? Sam Schumann writes, longtime listener, first-time caller. Well, thank you, Sam. Thanks for calling in. Do you believe one of the Avengers needs to die in Infinity War? Feige and Robert Downey Jr. both say that one plus will. The finale stakes merit it. No. Now, remember, you're asking me, does an Avenger need to die? I've been saying this all along. Nope. Will one of the Avengers die? Possibly. Yeah, that's very possible. That's very possible. But do they need to die? No. And I've said this before on the show, but I reject the notion that if you don't have somebody die, there's no stakes. I reject that. I completely reject that. I watched A-Team as a little kid every single week. Guess what? B.A. Baracus never died. Hannibal Smith never died. Face never died. Howling Mad Murdoch never died. Amy never died. They never died any week. And yet every week was the full sense of adventure every single time. You know, I watched Knight Rider as a kid. Guess what? Michael Knight never died. And I still felt the same big thrill and adventure every single week. James Bond is going into his 27th film? I'm not sure. James Bond's never died. And yet I feel the same great adventure going in every time with the stakes and all that kind of stuff. No, an Avenger does not need to die. Is it okay if a couple of them die? Yes, absolutely. If you build that into your narrative, a couple of them can die, no problem. I'm not saying none of them should die. I'm not saying that. But if you're going to ask me the question, do I think they need to die? Then I'm going to have to take the negative on that. No, they don't need to. They simply do not need to. I have never heard a rational, sound argument for why the only way there's stakes is if somebody dies. I disagree with that. I think there have been lots of great movies, lots of great stories told where none of the key characters ever die, and yet you do feel a great sense of the stakes and what's at stake and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. Will somebody die is a completely separate issue. That's a totally different issue. Should somebody die, I'm going to take the no on that. All right, I just got time for a couple more quick ones here, guys. This one comes to us from Simon Peterson, who writes, thoughts on Tony Kaye, loved American History X. Well, yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, completely American History X, the work of Tony Kaye. And now, Tony Kaye did not have, say, with the exception of a few highlights, he never had the career that I thought maybe he would. I mean, certainly more successful than a lot of other people, but it was never quite what I should. But American History X is such a disturbing, powerful film. I mean, you say American History X, and all you got to say is Kirby. And everybody knows what you're talking about. Just say Kirby to somebody, and that's it. Everybody knows what you're talking about. One of the most single disturbing scenes I've ever seen. I still have a hard time looking at it, man. It is rough. But anyway, yeah, so that's my thoughts on that. Gio writes, thoughts on Emmy Rossum as an actress? I think she's number one. Well, I don't think she's number one. I mean, if you do, that's great. I wouldn't put her in my top 10, top 20, but she's sick gorgeous. And she is talented. She's quite good. I think she's quite good. Is she Oscar worthy? No. Is she Emmy worthy? No. Is she a absolutely 100% serviceable actress that you could take and drop in almost any kind of movie? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I like her. And she's stupid, sick, gorgeous on top of that. But, would I rank her? Probably not. I probably don't rank her, but she's definitely good. She is good, and I enjoy seeing her and stuff. I do. 2 questions left here. No spoilers. Oh, this comes from Nathan C., by the way. No spoilers, but I've waited 3 weeks to bring this up. The sunrise in Black Panther feels like an homage to the sunrise scene in Blade 2. So many cool parallels. I mean, I don't know. Look, are there similarities? Yes. Was there influence drawn from it? I don't think so. But you're right. I mean, there are definitely some similarities there, and now that I'm thinking about it even more. But the sunrise is like just universally one of the most beautiful things you're ever going to see in your life. Like a really good sunrise is one of the best things you'll ever see. And whether you're talking about Blade with this race of things that can't ever be in the sun, or whether you're talking about this misguided villain who never had a chance to see a sunrise in Wakanda, whatever, and then that kind of being the last thing they get to see. Definitely similarities there. You're right on that. I don't know if there's any strings between them. I don't know that there's influence there just because, of what a human experience the sunrise is. But you're not wrong in pointing out some similarities. Absolutely. And the final question today, and don't worry, guys, any of you guys who have sent in questions that I did not get around to, they will be the first questions answered on tomorrow's open mic show, I promise. Unless there's a whole bunch I don't get around to on the John Campea show tomorrow, in which case I'll make a special separate video entirely just for those questions. So Sloth Gaming, again, I love that name. I saw a review on Star Wars Rebels. Your comment on Yoda saying to like about him being the last Jedi, don't you think Yoda would think Ezra is dead because of what happened? And it's easy to think that? No, I mean, look, Yoda never met Ezra, and yet he knew he was out there. He communicated with him through the Force. So if Yoda knows he's out there without ever meeting him in last season, why, if Ezra's alive, and he's probably alive, I think Dave Filoni's even said he's alive, even though it's impossible for him to be alive, going through hyperspace with a broken windshield and a Star Destroyer, I'm sorry, you're dead. But Dave Filoni said there's alive. That's fine, but there's no way they should be alive. Anyway, if he's alive, there is no reason to assume that Yoda wouldn't know he's alive. If Yoda knew he was alive before without ever meeting him, being, secluded on Dagobah, there's no reason for us to rationally assume that he wouldn't know if he's still alive now. So, yeah, I mean, look, I had several issues with the Rebels finale. There were more things that I loved about the Rebels finale, and my overall assessment is I really liked the Rebels finale, but there were a few things in it that just made me go, and made me frustrated. But overall, I thought it was a really good finale. I thought it was, much like the show itself, I overall enjoyed it. It had ups and downs for me along the way, yes, but overall, I really enjoyed Rebels. I certainly liked Rebels more than Clone Wars. That's for sure. I certainly did. But yeah, as far as the whole Yoda question goes, I don't see how we could say maybe Yoda doesn't know he was alive when, why wouldn't he? If he knew he was alive before and was able to communicate with him through the Force and all that kind of stuff, I don't think we can make an argument that Yoda wouldn't know. Yoda would probably know. Yoda would definitely know. So that's my thought on that. It seems inconsistent to say that Yoda wouldn't know. Anyway, that's just how I feel about it. I might be wrong. I might be completely wrong about that. We'll have to see what the storytellers have to say about it. But it's an excellent point that you bring up. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today's installment of Open Mic. I love doing this show, just taking these random questions from you guys. I hope you guys have a good time participating in it with me as well. Listen, guys, once again, if you don't have the Stardust app, do me a favor and make sure you use the link to go get it because that supports the channel. They actually pay me every time somebody clicks that link and goes and downloads the app. They do. See how upfront I am with you guys? But yeah, go get the app, install it, try using it out, put up some reactions, make sure to tag me on it at John Campea. That's like all one word, just like on Twitter, just at John Campea. Tag me on your video. I'll see it, and maybe you'll see your video pop up on an episode of the John Campea Show. All right, guys, that will do it for me. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.